Okay, we're going to start, everybody. We're from Waikiki School, and we'd like to welcome you to our presentation today. It was really inspiring, wasn't it, this morning? And it's such a great way to start our new year. So what we're going to do today is we're going to share some of what we're doing at Waikiki School, some of the practices that we found to be really successful, and then open it up for questions, because we're here to invite you to learn with us as we move forward in our journey. So today, I'm Bonnie Tabor, I'm the principal of the school, and I always say I'm the lucky principal of the school, and I really do mean it. This is Steph Sweeney. She is a grade 4 teacher. She's going to be helping with our story. And Catherine Kane, who is our grade 2 teacher, who has been on the same journey with me for 20 plus years so far.
We were very young when we started.
So we're going to just talk basically about how some of what we heard today from Tony Wagner, who is so inspiring and so on our wavelength, how we took a lot of what he's talking about, and we were lucky enough to agree with so much of what he talked about many, many years ago as well, and how we crafted a school that used a lot of those principles and brought them to life. So here we go. So today we're going to talk about our school culture, because over the years we found that it's not one program, it's not one thing, but it's a combination of so many things that work together over time to create a culture where all these many things that you want to see happen can happen. And so we're going to look at our culture, we're going to look at personal stories and how the culture has impacted our parents, students, and teachers. And I'm going to quote from Governor Ige, which he said a lot of this again this morning, and I really value it. He talked about, as he did this morning as well, back in July in the newspaper article, that pretty much we need to look at what's going to be happening in the future, and that students are going to be working, as you know, in jobs that don't yet exist, using technology that we don't even know about yet, solving problems that we can't even foresee. How do we prepare graduates for their future, not our past? And of course, the way to do that would be, how do we create schools that inspire innovation, creativity, and a healthy learning environment? So pretty much what we heard this morning. And then, again, just to reiterate some of what we heard, current research shows over and over again that it's the character traits that predict success more reliably than IQ. So Angela Duckworth, with her grit, talks about how grit, effort, and persistence are more important than aptitude as measures of future accomplishment, and that dittos what we heard this morning. Carol Dweck talks about the growth mindset, and many of you probably are familiar with that, where anyone can get better at whatever they're doing. Malcolm Gladwell also agrees, and again, it's the 10,000 hour rule. So the more you do something with passion, the more we practice, like he always uses the Beatles as the example, how they practiced and practiced and practiced, how passion and relentless practice trumps raw talent. And then, of course, our school has used the Art Costa model, which is habits of mind, and he also reaffirms all that his model has certain behaviors, he's called out certain behaviors from successful adults regardless of their profession, and these are the behaviors that are common to all people who are successful adults, and they are pretty much what we talked about and heard about this morning. So it's listening with empathy, persistence, flexibility, creativity, and more. And in our school, those are the behaviors that we have focused on. And it's made all the difference. So, given these givens, I guess, what do we do to bring it to life? How do we make this happen in our schools? What can we do to bring this to life and make it real? Take all this research and then make it real. And so pretty much we have found that you need to include the social emotional component into our learning planning. We need to create environments which maybe was not what we had seen as quite as important as we realize they are now. We need to create environments where our kids can be immersed in the context with these behaviors so they can learn to fail, pick themselves up, and keep right on going. They can learn to take risks, they can learn to persist, they can feel it, they can act it, they can try it, and they can be immersed in it so they see adults doing the same thing. Okay, so I started out my career as a counselor, and over the many years, there have been so many programs that have tried to bring these ideals to life. So I know many of you may be familiar with Positive Action. There are current programs in place as well. And I think the key difference is that you can't teach these as you teach other skills. You have to experience them. So like, as it says, you can't learn curiosity from a curiosity worksheet. We need to find a way to create a culture to immerse everybody in the learning community in the experience of challenging themselves to be more persistent, to think more flexibly, to be more creative. And one thing we found is that by doing this, by creating a culture that supports this, that problem, the gap group, which is always highlighted as one of the problems we're trying to address, we were able to reduce the gap because this is really critically important for all kids, but especially so for those who are in the gap group. So that's been one outcome that was unexpectedly validated by what we're doing. So we're going to go look at our Waikiki school story. This is a little bit about our demographics. I've been principal there now for 15 years, and I've loved being principal there. And I was really lucky enough to have my whole professional career pretty much involved at the school. So when I became principal in 2002, that was like just the beginning of the No Child Left Behind era. And as you look at our scores over the years, you see we've been able to do super well, and we've done it without focusing on the tests. Tests are a byproduct of what we do. And we've always believed in that, and we've always looked at what's most important, what do we want for our kids. And it's never been high test scores, although it has panned out that our kids have done exceptionally well. So when I first became principal, we were a smaller school, and now we're quite large. Comparatively, we're at 550. We have 1/3 of our kids English language learners. We have about 30% of our kids in the free and reduced lunch program. And we have quite a huge chunk of our enrollment being on GE, that people are trying, parents are enrolling their kids. We have lotteries so that they can see if they can find a slot in our school. This is changing. All these statistics are changing because right now we are huge, and we're trying to pull back on our enrollment and decrease our enrollment, so we're no longer able to take any GEs because so many of the people who want to come to our school now are moving into our area. So it's changing a lot, so we're in the midst of a lot of change, but as of 2016, these are our statistics. I'm most proud of, look at our science. And I really do believe the science is as high as it is because we have a farm in the back of our school, and we infuse science into everything we do on almost a daily basis. So the whole process of experimenting, project-based learning, thinking things through is part of how we live our lives. And the farm really made a difference. Right in the middle of Waikiki. So some of the other, just want you to know that our school has been successful without focusing on test scores. So pretty much we've done well, we've gotten recognition. We were a National Blue Ribbon School twice. which was super fun because we all went to DC together and we rented out a huge house, and we all attended the blue ribbon ceremonies in DC. So that was really a nice way to just kind of say thank you to everybody who contributed to the efforts. Our enrollment is super high right now. We actually have to turn away people who want to come to our school. So last year we actually had to turn away over 200 kids. We have a very strong, stable staff. Nobody wants to leave, and I don't even want to retire either. So we've had 2 Teachers of the Year, Catherine Kane being one of them. Right now, another exciting thing that's happening at our school is we found that the way to, and it also is from the grassroots up, the way to improve our teachers is the teachers who have become National Board Certified have found that to be a really successful way to improve their own skills. So from their report, we had 5 starting out to be National Board Certified, and then our PTO got involved because we requested their involvement, and they have given stipends and scholarships to, right now we have over 10 of our teachers enrolled in the National Board Certification because the teachers who have gone through that process have found that to be extremely successful as a professional development. And again, our gap group is super small. And, talk about stress. The nicest thing about it is that we all feel really lucky to be part of it. And our students are happy, our parents are happy, and our teachers are happy. So that's just a little brief picture of us. So how did we go about making this happen? Over the years, we've looked at different things, different variables that work together to create a culture, because it's a culture, not a program. And we found that there are 3 things that really do make a difference. One is the vision, another is the practices, and another is buy-in. So we've just separated it accordingly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the vision. And when I first was a counselor at Waikiki School, that was a long time ago, and at that point there was something called school community-based management, and you could fill out some kind of, I guess it was a proposal to become a school community-based management school, and we were one of the first to fill this out because the ideals supported what we believed in as a school. What it meant was we were going to use all our community contributors, our parents, our students, our teachers, our business people, our university people to come together to create the ideal kind of school. And that's right when I was starting out, and it was really an exciting time to come into the school system. So one of the first things we did, again, when I was just starting out, we went on a retreat, and actually we stayed at Kamehameha overnights, and we crafted a vision and a concept for our mindful school culture. And what we wanted to do, the reason that I think a vision is really important is it captures all the passion, the identity, and it gets the spirit of the school coming together in a unified focus. It answers, why are we doing this? What are we doing this for? And actually that vision that started out way back in that retreat is still operative today. And it established our identity, and our identity at that time was we wanted to become what we called a mindful school. Over the years now, it's current, mindful means so many different things, but we wanted to be a mindful school, which meant to us at that time, and still does, we wanted to create children, graduates who are ethical, involved thinkers, committed to making the world a better place. And we wanted to create kids, not who we were just plunking data into to think of what we heard today, but who could process information and who would, in addition to that, who would be thoughtful human beings. So at that time, we were really lucky because we found ways to bring these 2 ideals to life. One was we used the habits of mind of our Costa, and the other was we used philosophy for children, which was originated by Dr. Tom Jackson, based on Lippmann's ideas from the mainland. But he made it unique for our school and crafted it so it works for us. with us. So at that early retreat, which will stay indelibly in my mind forever, we realized that we wanted to create an environment, a school. And we looked at all the private schools, we looked at all the university research, we looked at anything we could think of that would help us create an ideal school. And we said, don't worry about any of the barriers, don't worry about money, don't worry about anything practical, but what would be our ideal if we could just craft what we wanted to see in our kids as graduates. So we decided we wanted that we would make sure that we created an environment where all children, all individuals, which meant teachers, everybody in the whole learning community, we would use the ideal that we are all increasingly capable of becoming better at what we're doing. So we can all become better thinkers and more thoughtful human beings. And that became part of what we all felt we have to do as being part of this learning community. It became something that we all bought into. We would continually strive to become better, more actualized human beings, and continually push ourselves to be creative professionals. Lifelong learning is a given expectation for all. Everybody in our community is continually, asking of themselves to continually challenge themselves to find creative ways to do whatever they're doing better. It goes from the cafeteria to the custodians, to the office staff, to the teachers, to the parents, everybody, and our kids. Harmony of heart and mind is intentionally nurtured. We look at that all the time. Are we doing that? How can we do that better? And 24 years later, we're still trying and still working at it. So how do we make this real? And many of these ideals you've already heard from Tony Wagner this morning and Governor Ige, but how did we take this way back 24 years ago and craft a school based on these ideals? So we were lucky at the time because we connected with Art Costa. I don't know, are any of you familiar with Art Costa? And he crafted these behaviors which he called the habits of mind, which I spoke about a little bit earlier. So these are behaviors that are connected with successful human beings no matter what they do with adults. So he has a number of them. We chose 9 of them and we created one of our own to use to craft our culture. And these not only helped us be better able to get along as staff, because collaboration is built into these habits of mind. So pretty much we can call each other on any of these. Are we being persistent? Are we being problem solvers? Are we working together and collaborating? But it helps our kids become better thinkers and more thoughtful human beings as well. So they shape the culture that we wanted to move into. And they create a very intellectually safe environment, because nobody is ever where they need to be. We're all always growing. And so they provided the vision and the tools we needed to move forward. And it was all there in one comprehensive package. So the key factors, because other people have looked into the habits of mind too, and it's an international program, and many schools internationally have been super successful with it, but there seem to be factors that determine whether it really works as a culture change agent. And one of the things that we found that made a really difference is that we started from grassroots. So it wasn't top down ever. It was always from the bottom up. We all bought into the idea that we wanted to try to become better human beings, better professionals, and craft an environment which could bring forth the best from our kids using the habits of mind. So the other thing that really made a difference for us is that we've been doing this for a long time, so we didn't expect any transformation immediately. It's not a program, it's a process. And so over the course of time, we kept deepening what we were doing and getting better at it, and we continue to try to improve what we're doing, but it's not something that can be done in a year. It's not a program. It's a part of life. It's a way of life. It's a way of relating to each other. It's a way of teaching. It's a way of assessing. It's over time. And the other thing that we felt was really critical in terms of why it was successful at our school was that we really felt it was important to model what we value and teach. So some of these guidance programs say, oh, I want to make these kids be kinder or something like that. I'm going to do that to you. I'm going to do that to the kids. Whereas in the habits of mind, it's how can we model what we want to see brought forth in our kids. So it really makes us all continually reassess ourselves as people. Are we modeling what we want for our kids? And that has made all the difference in the world. I hope I get this right. So, and we do it as much as we possibly can. So over the years, we've been consistent. We have used these habits of mind, and they help us in terms of how we teach, how we relate to each other, how we discipline, and we do it as often as we can. So right now we have lunch clubs. So during lunch, they're exposed to different opportunities to look at the whole child and to practice the habits of mind. During after school, we have an after-school enrichment program where they're getting more opportunities to live and practice the habits of mind. Our A+ is a Mindful A+ program. Our summer program, we have a summer program, intercession program. So it's a total package, and everybody is on the same page philosophically, which makes a huge difference. Okay, so those are some of the ways that the vision really impacts our school in terms of bringing to life some of these things we want to see, these really critical things. I'm going to turn it over now to Catherine, who's going to talk about some of the practices.
I'd like to roam around a little bit. Can you folks hear me if I just speak regularly rather than with the mic? Okay. I'm going to attempt to be technologically advanced. So our practices. Over the years, it's Habits of Mind from Dr. Costa has been a philosophical way of looking at things. But for us, we as teachers have been developing practices around habits of mind. So some of our practices are integrated units and all segments. Okay. Contribute to it. Okay. I'm going to go here. So you'll see in our hallways, some of our practices are to make all of our thinking visible up and down the hallways, the habits of mind, bumper stickers, cafeteria things. So everywhere you look around the school, there is something to do with habits of mind and expectations of our students. So we're going to show you a sampling of our practices, and that's my job. So it's infused into our units that we design and develop. We definitely integrate our units, math, science, language arts, and the arts. Recently, through a collaboration with the Art Museum, we're designing science and reading units around art. And that's been a wonderful thing, but it's the habits of mind that is not another layer, but an important aspect. If we want children to succeed, they have to persist. And if we want them to behave, our discipline referrals are reflections of what habit of the mind should you have used, what habit of the mind will you use next time, and what does that look like and sound like. We also have monthly focus on habits of mind. And I know there's 16 habits and there's only like 9 months of school, but we try to match those up with things that are happening within that month. For instance, usually the testing is in April, so we'll have persistence. And in January, we began to take responsible risk-taking, and we do our variety show with responsible risk-taking. So we try to associate our monthly mindful focus with the habits of mind. So we have those in our classrooms. And one of my favorite pieces that, as Bonnie said, it's a real grassroots type of thing. We're given a lot of freedom to integrate and do as we think our students and our interests are and our passions are. So one of our second grade teachers, she wanted to involve the parents a bit more in habits of mind and get them to know the habits of mind a little bit better. And so she sent home a project, and we saw these projects coming back. What habit of the mind are you really good at? And present it, figure a way to present it. Well, those presentations have been so delightful over the years. I'm going to show one in just a second. But what happened is, from her classroom assignment, our whole grade level, and I'm a second grade teacher, decided that we wanted not only to send it home as a total grade level assignment, but we wanted to send it home and then present it, have everyone share. So we started an evening mindful fair. And from there, it went to school-wide last year, where each and every class was doing something different. Each child was presenting what they were great at, what they were good at with habits of mind. And people were learning from each other, and parents came. And so that's been a project that's been really near and dear to my heart. So I wanted to share with you, some children present with books, some children present using posters. One little girl, she was a gymnast, and she had to persist, and she had all of her medals hanging and pictures. So it's really how they want to present the project. And it goes home and comes back. So it's parents talking and getting involved in habits of mind. First, define it. Then, after you define it, why does this particular activity share it? So this is actually Nate Schatz, one of our deputy superintendent's boys. And due to the time factor, we're going to show you another one. But he did a great basketball, how he had to persist. But we're going to go on, and I'm going to show you one of our first ones, Camille and her family, sharing with you what it means to be listening with empathy.
February's habit of the mind is listening with empathy. Listening with empathy means understanding and sharing another person's feelings. In other words, walking in another person's shoes.
There's a lot of habit of mind humor and joy in these. So we ask for examples and non-examples.
What's up, Jack? You're sad. Okay.
Because Mary went to the house and I couldn't go.
All right. Let's go watch some TV. I'm watching this show. Go.
He does not listen with empathy. He watched TV while talking, had poor eye contact, said mean things, and shooed him away.
Hey, buddy. What's wrong? Let me turn the TV off. What happened? Oh, I'm sorry, honey. We'll think of something else to do. You and me can play, okay? Does that sound good?
She was listening with empathy. She turned off the TV, had good eye contact, asked questions, said nice things, and gave a hug.
And so those are the types of things that are really important at school for them to understand.
Listening with empathy is important because it lifts people's spirits, shows that the person cares about your feelings, helps problem solve, and makes good friendship. So remember, always listen with empathy. Listening and empathy. Listen with empathy.
Listen with empathy.
Listen with empathy.
Thank you for watching.
That's wonderful. so those are the kinds of things that we find very valuable for understanding. And I know a lot of people say, oh, this vocabulary is so above children. It really isn't, and we'll show you that through another video soon. Some of our other practices are, we don't recognize good citizens so much as habits of the mind in our quarterly assemblies, and they match for like August, September, October. The habits of mind that we do during those 3 months are awards at our assembly. So children receive awards for responsible risk-taking. They receive awards for being persistent, for humor and joy. Now, oftentimes at schools, children receive awards are usually the same children over and over again because they're behaving themselves in the traditional way. But I can give the humor and joy to a child who is just like, you know, full of energy and not compliant, as Tony Wagner said. So it breaks that boundary for children and recognizes differences. And you saw one of our students developing Habits of Mind video. They also develop Habits of Mind video for the assemblies. So groups of students are always out there photographing. We have on YouTube, if you put Waikiki School in, you can see some of our news broadcasts around Habits of Mind and what's going on at school that day or in that month. So we have our broadcast uploaded to YouTube. And then what's been really a tremendous vehicle for listening with empathy, responsible risk-taking, as well as metacognition, thinking about thinking and posing questions, has been our Philosophy for Children vehicle. And we're going to turn it over right now to Stephanie Sweeney to talk to you about that inquiry method.
All right, so, you know, as a school, we define what matters to us, what our values are, and we outline that in our vision, our mission. So we know our why, but it's really important to develop pedagogical strategies with which to bring that mission and vision to life. And another way in which we do that is by practicing philosophy for children, or endearingly referred to as P4C. And P4C brings to life our philosophy of education. And one reason it's important to us is because it's really rooted in wonder and inquiry. You know, we all like to look at that study that Tony Wagner referenced earlier this morning about how as students get older, the longer they're in school, the less curious they are, right? We all know that. Sir Ken Robinson talked about that. Tony Wagner talks about it. It's really one of those givens, one of these phenomena that we want to work against, but how are we doing that? P4C is one way in which we can do that, because P4C is student-driven. The questions come from the students. And students are amazing at inquiry. They really are. In the past, my students have asked things like, what do we mean by friendship? What are the reasons for war? In my 5th grade class last year asked, is it true that the way to gain freedom is through fighting a war for independence, as we were studying the Revolutionary War? And my students this year voted to discuss what are the reasons we study ancient Hawaiians. As I was ready to launch into this entire social studies unit, my students made it apparent to me that they really needed to dialogue with one another why it is they're studying it in the first place. So yeah. Second is that it creates an intellectually safe environment. So in P4C, we have a concept of safety. And this creates an environment in which every student, literally every student's thoughts are welcomed and valued. And that's lived and understood in each and every classroom in our school. So we have students that want to come to school, that look forward to coming to school. We have students that have come to us from other schools, you know, on the mainland or elsewhere, who have had a really hard time in schools. One student in particular that I had for 2 years, he hated school, just had a really rough time, didn't make any friends, fought day in and day out about going to school, and he came to us at Waikiki School and experienced the safe learning community, and he loved coming to school. He wanted to come to school every day. And in fact, when he woke up late, as he often did, he would be so stressed out and so panicked because he wanted to get here. He wanted to get to us. Third is that it's student-directed and democratic. So in P4C, we sit in a circle. So we have this really profound transformation of the power structure within the classroom. And in that circle, we have the teacher as a facilitator, as a coach, as Tony Wagner was referencing earlier. So the teacher is also the student, and the students are the teachers. And they use a community ball with which to pass around the flow of the dialogue. It's not the teacher calling on students. It's not the teacher trying to find correct answers. It's the students engaging in a meaningful dialogue and deciding whose voice is being heard next, and really ensuring that all voices are heard, because that becomes a big priority to them. They want to hear what everyone else has to say. And finally, it uses what Dr. Thomas Jackson calls the Good Thinkers Toolkit. And I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on exactly what that is, but it really outlines tools with which we can use to become deeper thinkers. It gives us the tools to ask, what do we mean by? Which helps us define what it is that we're talking about. Just recently, a dialogue we had was, well, what do we mean by original? And my students were really trying to come to terms with this idea of original being something that's unique or novel versus original being normal, because we see things like Pringles having an original flavor, which is the plainest flavor. So that part of the toolkit gave them the power with which to examine these words and concepts that have multiple meanings and different perspectives. The R is reasons. What are the reasons? So our students will never, ever, ever state an idea without backing it up with reasons and examples. And this proliferates into all of the content areas. If we have elementary educators or language arts teachers who struggle with their kids providing text-based evidence for their ideas, this is built into P4C. Students are used to finding reasonings and examples for what they say. They're taught to examine assumptions. What are the underlying assumptions that we are making and believing in? And a really powerful part of the toolkit is asking, is it true? And again, this also helps us with our interdisciplinary learning. Just recently, my students in science, they were studying gravity, and the student on his own stated this question and used it as his research question: is it true that heavier objects fall faster? So you really see these tools being used throughout the school day and being infused throughout the curriculum. And in math, finally we come to examples and counterexamples. And in math, whenever my students make a statement like, all angles are made by 2 line segments. This is something we tell students. Angles are made by 2 line segments that are connected at a vertice. I mean, what does that mean? So you can ask students, do you agree with that? And some of them said no, no. And I said, okay, well, give me a counterexample. And they were unable to find that. So you can use these tools throughout the day, but also they help us become better and deeper thinkers. So again, it's really important to define your purpose and find your why, what matters to your school, your environment, your culture, your parents, and your students. But then once you have that defined, you have to really find practices that bring that to life, so you can walk the walk instead of just talking the talk. Okay, and then the third part, so we have our vision defined, we have practices in which we can bring that vision to life, and then the third thing we need is for all members of that culture to buy in. So we're going to look at how we have buy-in from all stakeholders.
So one last thing I just want to say before we move into this part is what Steph was talking about in philosophy for children. One of the more wonderful things is really the students are empowered to lead and decide who's going to be talking in the discussion. So many times the teacher will have their hand up that they'd like to make a comment, and they'll have to wait, and it's fine. We're all fine with it. They'll wait until somebody throws them the community ball so they get it, so that we can get a turn to participate in the discussion. It's really powerful because it shows that we're all in this process together, we're all collaborating, and we're all part of the discussion, and there's no one facilitator, but we're all involved. So that's another point. Okay, this is the mindful experience, begins in kindergarten. How do we start helping our community understand what these habits of mind are all about, and how do we help them live them? And so this is just a little video that talks about it from a kindergartner's perspective.
Hi, my name is Kayla, and I'm going to tell you about what a mindful student is about. When someone's on the slide at recess time, you don't push them down. You let them choose when they want to go. So you don't just push them down. You have to let them know when they are going to go. So I'm finished with that one, and now I'm going to go on to another one. When someone in the classroom at center, and when someone's having a ship, and you don't just snatch it away, you have to ask the person so they don't get sad. So you have to ask the person, and they have to give you permission for you to have the toy. And so I'm finished.
And they have their own concepts in kindergarten. We have, let's see, am I going the right way, this one? It's really important, it's critically important that parents buy into the whole process and the whole vision that we have for the school as well. We have a video of our parents talking about how they get involved in the school, but we're thinking we may not have time, so if we have time at the end, we'll show that to you. It's 3 minutes, and it just talks about their different ways of becoming involved. So we're going to move forward, and we're going to talk about how our teachers are empowered to bring this whole vision to life, and that's really critical.
Okay, so just a little background about myself. I've always been a really passionate educator, and I can articulate very well. I haven't always been at Waikiki School. My first few years were spent at other public schools and a charter school in Honolulu. And there's one certain teacher whose students work in the garden way more than any others. And they also harvest the food from the garden, and they cook. They learn to cook right in their classroom, and they do that weekly. Another teacher whose passion is the sciences built solar-powered go-karts with his class. And he also, years prior, built a climbing wall in our cafeteria that's still in use to this day. So because we're not all expected to be carbon copies of one another and be on the same page of the same curriculum on any given minute of any given day, we're given the license and the freedom with which to be creative educators. We also, like for our students, we expect a growth mindset, or we try to, support a growth mindset. We also have that same view of ourselves as educators. And we're always involved in continuous learning and self-improvement. So we have summer reading, and that is not something that's necessarily chosen by our principal, it's chosen by the staff. Bonnie does a really great job of asking us, what do you guys want to read? What are you interested in learning about? And last summer, we actually had the most selection that we've ever had. There were like 6 different books we could choose from. But again, that goes back to the autonomy. we chose what we were interested in reading about, and then we can come to the table when school starts again and share what we learned with each other. And we also have the support and the power with which to enact change based on what we read. So our 5th grade a few years ago read the book Outliers. And there was a section in there about how, you know, a certain amount of physical education has been found to increase, you know, creativity and intelligence. So they started going outside and running for, honestly, I think it was like 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And the students could walk too. It wasn't like they were being tortured. But the point is that we're always reading and we're always thinking, we're always learning, but we're also given the power to make changes based on what we're reading.
What about homework?
Last summer, some of us read the book The Homework Myth. Well, what was the author again? Alfie Kohn, that's what I was thinking. And basically the book says that for elementary age children, there's no evidence, no research that supports that homework helps in any way. In fact, there's anecdotal evidence that it does the opposite, that it makes students less interested in what they're learning and less motivated to come to school. So this year our 4th and our 5th grades, as a whole grade level, decided to do away with homework. We no longer have any homework. Yeah. So also with continuous learning, we have PD that's tailored to our interests and our needs. That's ongoing. We have that every year. And we also have a lot of really important relationships and connections with other schools. We're always visiting other schools and learning from them. We have schools coming to us and dialoguing with us, and we learn from each other. We also have teacher exchanges where teachers go to Japan. And we also have Japanese teachers and teachers from Australia, Taiwan, New Zealand coming to us. So we're always in this, you know, open growth mindset of learning, like a beginner's mind. We really have a beginner's mind in which we think, you know, we're always looking for inspiration and learning from other people. And finally, we're given the power to act in a way that's aligned with our values and our school culture. You know, if we say that we want our students to be joyful, lifelong learners, and then we spend most of our time prepping them for the test, we're not living in a way that's aligned with our culture and values. So if we say that we want them to be joyful, lifelong learners, we get to engage in processes in which we can bring that to life with our students. And all teachers do that in different ways, but the main thing is that we're really living and breathing with what we believe. And in summary, all of this really leads to creativity, innovation, and teacher satisfaction or happiness, which is the goal. Okay.
Thanks, Steph.
Thanks.
You know, Steph is going to head out the back door because she's flying to the Big Island. I really want to thank her for being here. She's in a competition.
Yay, Steph.
So I'm going to finalize this really quickly. So our compass and what's been really for me in the last 26 years of being at Waikiki Elementary has been, what's been consistent has been the habits of mind. Finding ways to put them out, living them, changing my life to be a better person so I could serve my students better, listening to my students. Talking about P4C, I was thinking in my brain, when P4C came to our school 17 years ago, it was so hard for me, the large and in charge teacher, to let go and to wait my turn. But what I found is the listening aspect of it was so deep and brought me to being a better person and a better teacher. So what's happened is change, but it's always been our compass and our lens, the habits of mind. But this is the key for me as a teacher there for the last 26 years. It's just someone, like my administrators, my parents, my students, and my grade level, someone to encourage my development and the opportunity every single day to do what I do best, make my mistakes, learn from them, reflect, and be happy. happy and joyous in that learning community. So that's what I've been given for the last 26 years, and that's what has been critical to me. So it's kind of like the Goldilocks story for me, because this is my third principal at Waikiki Elementary. And our first principal brought us, that I was with, she brought us the habits of mind, which was great, but it was a really top-down thing, and it wasn't from everyone's heart. I remember how Steph talked about the circle. Well, it wasn't a circle when I first went there. It was a long table with the principal at the top and all the GLCs on either side, and the new people like me way in the back. But that principal was brilliant, and she offered us so much. But again, the data collection, it's got to have that balance, and too hot. It's not just about, the dispositions. It's about intellectually stimulating culture and growth in students, and that content's important. It is critical to utilize those dispositions to get at our content. So it's a combination of finding that balance of the just right porridge, just like Goldilocks did that day. And that's what our culture continuously strives to do, is to find that balance. And we have to listen and use the habits of mind personally and throughout. So I'm going to end here with the valuable lessons that I've found. A great question is far more valuable than a right answer. And I don't have all the answers. Collaborative co-construction deepens learning, and with my students, that is collaborative, constructive. It's about what the students are learning, not what about I'm teaching. Also, it's listening carefully with your heart and your mind. That's what P4C gave to me. It got me to stop talking and start listening. And you get some of what you want at Waikiki, but you don't get all of what you want. We still are a public school. We still have to do a lot of things. And you have to listen intently. So learning isn't just about those standards. It's a continuous process, and that's what's fun. Things start spinning off from one another, and that's where the fun begins. And learning is messy. Reflection on what went wrong is just as valuable to me as what went right in a lesson. And responsible risk are important learning experiences for all of us. My stepping out of my comfort zone constantly, just creates the best atmosphere. My students see me, and I share that with them. Together is better. I value each person's contribution to the learning community. And I have to say that's been a big transition for me. I always wanted to do everything just the way I wanted to do it. And the habits of mind are essential. They teach us across the curriculum. So that's it. So, yeah.
We have one 3-minute video that just sums it all up, and then we're done. So.
I think we're out. We're sorry about not having enough time.
If you want to stay for
We call it habits of the mind, and we've become what we call mindful schools. It's a philosophical stance that whatever we do is with the idea of becoming ethical decision makers, good people with a concern for each other, for the community, for the world at large. And through the habits of mind, we're able to work together as a school community to develop mindful human beings, whether it be our teachers, our community members, our children, our parents. We all work to find ways to evolve ourselves as mindful human beings, as ethical decision makers who feel really the need to be of service to making the world a better place. Tremendous amount of community engagement in what we do. For example, we have a farm that goes on in the back of our school where we harvest and we sell our produce, and we're connecting with various restaurants in our community. we have a huge after-school program in which we have tremendous amount of community involvement when our community people are our teachers.
This is a new cooking cart we got. Miss Debbie bought it for us. Here we're making like a salad. In Garden Club we make strawberry, papaya, and banana smoothie.
Lastly, we have the solar panels, which are hooked up, going down all the way to this circuit breaker, but when you plug it in,
You can make the solar flow straight to the battery.
pretty much what we're doing here is converting solar energy into chemical energy into kinetic energy.
We're trying to give off the word that it can be done, and to have 6th graders do it shows how easy it is. You spin the electric motor, which creates electricity, then it charges the battery. We're trying to save energy so then we don't have as much global warming.
Do dreams mean anything, or are dreams important?
Sometimes I think dreams can give me a sign and that your dreams are about stuff you usually saw that day. Maybe you get nervous because like on that day you felt something scary or something like that.
What you're seeing when you're watching a P4C session, you'll see the use of what we call a community ball, which is invested in the power of who's to speak. So you see the children taking over in a way this responsibility, if you will, as to who's going to speak and in what order. So it's no longer the teacher who's going to be primarily directing, but the kids themselves are directing the flow of the inquiry.
We usually pick a topic first, what we all wonder about.
Just everyone listening and listening with empathy.
Something that's bothering you can probably get suggestions from other people.
It's a place to express yourself and get things off your chest if you're having any troubles. I think all in all, everyone who has graduated from this school helps everyone in the community just by demonstrating their habits of mind, which is definitely something that needs to be brought out to our community.